Welcome to Bled Talk, where language barriers are shattered and aspirations take flight. I'm your host, Samuel Bledsoe, here to ignite your English journey. Each week, join us for captivating conversations between native speakers, unraveling the secrets of vocabulary and expressions through authentic stories and natural dialogue. Let's empower your language skills and embrace the power of communication. Let's dive into today's episode. Welcome, everybody, to this week's episode of Bled Talk. I am with Jordan, and I'm very excited to talk to him, to kind of have this conversation, because he's from the UK, but he lives in Japan, and he's been teaching English for 14 years now. And so he has lots of experience, and I'm sure he has a lot of great things to share with us today. So thank you, Jordan, for being here. And
thank you very much for inviting me.
Yeah, and let's go ahead and let's begin. So Jordan, tell me, how did it all start? How did you decide to become an English teacher, and then how did you get to Japan?
It's a long story, but I'll try and give you the short version of it. I kind of fell into teaching, really. I didn't really have any interest or desire to teach English when I was younger. But after living in Canada for about a year, the Lehman shock happened. And then some of my Japanese friends who I met in Canada said, you should try and teach English in Japan because it's fun, and there's a lot of foreign people enjoy teaching English over there, because there weren't many jobs in the UK due to the financial crisis. So I came over to Japan and started teaching, and I really enjoyed it. And I felt that it was something that I could do for a while, but I didn't realize that I would be doing it for 14 years. So yeah, I kind of, as I said, fell into it, and I enjoyed it, and just kept rolling over, and basically changing throughout the sort of times of teaching from kindergarten age to like business English, and then high school. I've managed to teach basically people in all walks of life and all ages. So it's been a fun ride so far.
Oh, yeah, that's great. And what would you say, what was your favorite, or I guess what is your favorite group to teach out of, from kindergarten all the way up to adults?
That's such a tough question, because they have so many different components to the lessons. I think I love the kindergarten age because they're so energetic and they love English no matter what you do. So they're very, a word in Japanese, that they're very genki. They have lots of energy, and they enjoy just the games and the songs and everything. So I think that part of it, like the active part of English, is great. But I also do enjoy teaching the travel and business English too, because part of one of my sort of passions is I enjoy traveling, and when I was at university I studied business as well, so it kind of fits in nicely to what I enjoy teaching. So I generally like I like all ages, actually. It's very difficult to pinpoint which one that I like the most.
They all kind of have their pros and their cons, right? There's things that are good in each group, and then there's things that you kind of wish would be different. But I agree. I always tell people that I like teaching children because, like you said, they have a lot of energy. They have they have a good vibe, into how they do things. But adults are also cool because, like you said, it's a different English, and one thing that I really enjoy is being able to meet so many different people from different backgrounds, and They all have
Absolutely.
they have different goals, and they do different things. And I feel like as a teacher, I've learned so much about so many different careers that I probably never would have learned had I not started teaching English.
100%. I would say I would say that a lot of my a lot of the news or the information that I consume now is not necessarily from watching or reading the news. It's from people that I teach because they're in such a variety of different fields. One person who I taught recently, which is such a really interesting person to teach, is I taught one of the coaches of the Japanese women's national team
Oh,
before the Women's World Cup. So the conversations that we had about the preparations of the World Cup and how she was taking part in some training exercises in, I think it was Belgium as well. And she also played in one of the pre-tournament kind of like tournaments that they had in, I think it was in America.
and
So those conversations are very rare, but so interesting because you very, again, as I said, you very rarely get to meet those people and have a conversation. And it's just eye-opening and quite fun and interesting, actually. So, yeah, it's very good indeed.
no, absolutely, yeah. I've met people, sometimes you meet them and they tell you what they do, but they tell you in a way that like is so calm and normal, and you're like, did you just tell me that that you're the vice president of this company, or that you do this, or you do this? And you're like, oh, okay, cool, that's fun.
Yeah,
Uh,
I think you have to sometimes contain your excitement of talking to somebody. You're like, oh, okay, sure.
yeah,
I won't ask too many questions this lesson, but I've got many more that I'm going to ask over the period of time.
yeah, no, absolutely, no, I agree. But cool. And when you went to Japan, did you
Wow.
already speak Japanese, or did you not? Did you understand a couple things, or how was that?
Wow, that's an interesting one because I had no knowledge of Japanese at all before I came here. And that was, in a way, that was probably from a teaching aspect very good because they prefer. I mean, schools or companies prefer teachers to 100% teach in English, not use any Japanese at all. Um, so, from a teaching aspect, that was very good. And it was no problem for me to communicate with companies because they had English speaking staff. Um, However, the downside of this, and I can't speak for everyone because I think there are definitely people who come to Japan and they fully immerse themselves and they learn the language very quickly. But because of my job and I was working quite a lot, I never had the time to study Japanese. Um, so my level of Japanese is still pretty bad due to the fact that I only speak English during work, and there are sort of very few opportunities for me to actually study and learn it, unfortunately. So
Yeah,
yeah, that's the downside of it.
yeah. But it's still good to be able to be in a position where you get to speak English as well. And like you said, I'm sure a lot of people, they kind of see that as that's a good thing. It's a good thing that you have to communicate, you have to explain things. I know, sometimes I have to act like I don't speak Portuguese,
Yes.
because if I do speak any Portuguese, people sometimes will say, "Oh, well, he's going to talk to me in Portuguese." But since when I came to Brazil, I came as a missionary for my church, And
Oh, okay.
and so I didn't come to teach English. Therefore, I had to have that immersion of Portuguese and everything. And so, and it
Yeah.
was tough. It was really difficult. But I do agree with you that it is something, looking back, it has helped me a lot as a teacher because something that I really believe firmly is that a good teacher is also a good student. And so,
Really?
and so I think that by learning Portuguese and going through that process, I was able to understand what makes things so difficult for them learning English, because like
Yeah.
I tell people that I don't think, as much as people like to say that, for example, oh, you need to only think in English to speak English, or only think in Portuguese, or only think in Japanese. But the thing is that they have to work together. If they don't
Yeah.
work together, it doesn't work. It's like having a new roommate, like at first they're going to fight a lot, and that's why you have a lot of difficulty to learn. But once they kind of learn how to work with each other, they're going to help you in a lot of ways that you never imagined.
Oh,
Sometimes
absolutely.
I think Portuguese has actually helped me speak English, even as a native, but I feel like
Mm.
I'm able to speak English at a more elevated level, because of being able to say different things in Portuguese. And it's,
Mm.
when you learn a new language, you kind of learn about an origin of a word, and you go, oh, well, that's interesting. And especially, for, I don't know if they actually say this in the UK, but at least in the US, they always tell us that like American English is it's like the lazy version of English. And so, and because, well, what's funny is that when I do look into like the origin of words and things like that, I've come to find that in the UK, they still use those words.
Yeah.
But for us, it's something that's no, we don't use it a lot in our daily conversation. And so, like for example, here there's a word that they use for calm, which is
Mm.
tranquilo, which sounds like tranquil, right?
Mm.
And tranquil, I think, is used a lot more in the UK than it is in the US. I mean, we
Mm.
don't use it, I don't think, ever. But
Yeah.
I
That's
knew it.
that's
I knew it. And so it was, because when I was a kid, I also I was weird. I like to read the dictionary.
Oh, well, okay.
Yeah, I would sit in school. Kids would pick out different books and things, and I would just like, oh well, I'll look at this and see what weird words I can find. And turns out it paid off in the end. But
There you go.
but
Yeah.
yeah,
No, I think the ability to, as you said, the ability to learn like a language and have that sort of in the back of your mind when you're teaching is very important as well. And one thing that I one thing that I have learned is that I've been able to pick up a lot of Japanese through repetition of basically actions, going and ordering food or asking questions in a supermarket or a shop, etc. So because of those repeated actions, it kind of sticks in your mind. And I think trying to get a lot of English learners to understand that, yes, maybe the repetition is a little bit boring, but if you do it so many times, you're never going to forget what you've done. I think that's kind of helped me try and focus a lot of the students on the idea of repetition, and not just repeating in one particular situation, but repeating similar phrases in different situations so that they're more familiar with being able to use like set phrases and things like that. So I agree with you. I think from that experience, it's helped me kind of explain and show students that this is a good way of remembering or memorizing set phrases and things. So it's definitely helped. But
yeah,
I do wish I did. I spoke fluent Japanese. I do really.
it'll happen. It'll still happen one day, with some time. But good. And a question I have for you as well is, So do you ever miss the UK? Like, do you ever miss home? I guess would be a good way to ask that.
Yeah. Like, I think the the some the things that I miss about England are the easiness of doing things sometimes. For example,
I agree with that.
play, playing tennis in Japan is like you've got to book the tennis court, you've got to then have a specific time, and sometimes they don't allow you to play on the tennis court unless there's four people, things like that. So there are very like specific rules with certain things that you can do. Whereas in England, I can go to my local park and just play tennis, and it's free. You don't need to worry about booking a time or anything like that. So I think sometimes the easiness of doing things, I really miss that. That side of things, I think, as
Yes,
well.
I agree with that. I think here in Brazil, I would say the same thing. I don't think I think you said it in a really good way because I haven't thought of it like that as the easiness of doing things. Because, like you said, for example, I love basketball a lot, and it's not hard to play basketball, but it's a lot more difficult to find people who want to play, who can play.
Yes.
And also, for example, I tell people at the basketball court all the time, at home, a basketball is, you could go to a store and buy one for $5 or for $10. But here in Brazil, if you want one, trading their currency for dollars, you're going to pay like the same basketball would be $20 or 25. Like the sports equipment itself is so much more
Yeah.
expensive. Tennis is a good example. In the US, you can buy tennis rackets for, you can get two for $50 and buy some tennis balls for 10 and go play. Whereas here
Yeah.
you have to spend $100. It'll be a good racket, but you don't have those options to just get something
Right.
to play with. You have to be super serious about that thing. And so yeah, I think that's a really good way of putting it.
Yeah.
And the food, that's another thing. So
Mm.
I know what people say Japanese food is, here in South America or in the US, but I'm pretty sure that it's not what people say it is. And I'm
Right.
curious, what is like, what's your opinion on the food? Do you like it, and what is it?
So I'm not really a fish eater.
Oh, okay.
So things like sushi and sashimi are definitely out of the question. But there are other foods that are really, really good if you're in Japan. And I would say that, of course, many people know ramen is very famous, very popular. But probably what a lot of people don't know is that there are so many different kinds of ramen, and each area has its own twist and its own kind of style. So
Okay.
that's really interesting when you
Yeah.
go from one prefecture. I'm not sure. Do they have prefectures, or is it provinces in Brazil?
In Brazil, I think it's like a province. Like they call them states. Yeah, they have.
Okay, so
Uh-huh.
okay, so a prefecture is kind of like that. So you've got lots of different prefectures in Japan, and if you move from one to another, like they might have a very different style of ramen. So that's really cool. And also the east side of Japan, like where Tokyo is, or you've got the west side of Japan where Osaka.
Good.
Um, they have very different food as well. Of course, you can get the same food in both areas, but like the origins of those foods, like for example, okonomiyaki, which is kind of like a savory pancake. Um, I don't want to do it a disjustice in saying that,
Right.
but that's the best way I can describe it.
Well, I'm sure it's good.
That's on the west side, so that's where like the origin of it comes from. But that's really nice as well. So yeah, I think Japan has some fantastic food, and there's a lot of different varieties as well. So it's not just raw fish, as many people think.
Yeah.
So there's definitely a wide variety.
Yeah, I would say most people, when they think of Japanese food, they just think of sushi. I think here, something I think is interesting. I don't think yakisoba is from Japan, right? Or is it?
Yeah, you're right. Yakisoba is from Japan. Yes.
Okay, so yeah, so here a lot of people, they like yakisoba and
What?
they like sushi, but there's sushi here. I also was not a big fan of sushi in the US, but then I came to Brazil and they put a ton of cream cheese in their
Oh,
sushi,
really?
which is, yeah, I don't know why. The thing that something cool about Brazilian food is, like, even if it's from outside, they put a little twist of their own on it,
That's
and
awesome.
their sushi has a lot of cream cheese, and it makes it taste really good. So I do like
Sure.
that.
The one thing though that I must kind of highlight, which I think is a little bit strange from a foreign person's point of view, is that some of the pizzas here in Japan, they have their, as you said, their own twist on some sort of pizza toppings,
Uh-huh.
and they're not really conventional. For
Really?
example, they put potato on top of the pizza.
Oh, that's weird.
Yeah, especially I think one of the most sort of popular combinations with potato is potato and mayonnaise. Yeah.
Don't know how I feel about that.
um, Also, tuna has been seen to be on pizza as well.
Here,
Uh,
they also put tuna. There's a whole tuna pizza that's
oh,
put
really?
in it. I do not like it. I like fish, but tuna on fish on pizza is just bizarre to me. That is
Yeah,
crazy.
I agree.
Yeah,
There's
I'm
definitely strange twists.
yeah, I'm glad that you have been to that same thing, because here in Brazil, any pizzeria, here I would say something that's really popular is that a good restaurant has a lot of options, and so
Yes.
here the pizzeria is going to have 90 different combo
Wow.
pizza, if that makes sense. So they do like 1 through 7 different types of cheese. They have here they do like shredded chicken, and then it's like a cream cheese that they put on top of that.
Right.
They like to do corn and peas and ham and
Yep.
cheese. And they have the one with fish. They do I don't, have you ever had a stroganoff, like the Russian kind of stroganoff?
Oh, yeah, yes.
So there's Russian stroganoff, and then there's a Brazilian stroganoff, which is a little bit
Okay.
different. It's a lot more tomatoey, and there's like
Okay.
it's like basically it's chicken, tomato sauce, ketchup, mustard, and some spices, and
Right.
it's really good. I love it. But they put it on pizza, and then they put
Okay.
like some little crunchy like French fry type things on top. Um, I've had a pizza with barbecue on it. I mean, I've had some barbecue pizzas in the U.S. before, but like I agree with you. Sometimes the pizza toppings are crazy, but
Yeah.
that's it. I think that's part of it. I think that's one of the things that, because for me, I'm more of a traditional pizza kind of guy. I like I always tell people that for me, the three most important things on a pizza is the crust, the sauce, and the cheese.
Yeah.
And sometimes they don't even have all of those things on the pizza. So but it's definitely cool. I like that. I like that you
Yeah.
brought.
Definitely an interesting experience. I agree. Yes.
Yeah,
Having those twists, of course.
yeah, and kind of going back to English. So
Well,
what out of your 14 years of experience? So tell me, what would be something that you've seen a lot of people kind of have difficulty with? I guess in general, like basically, like what would be your biggest tip that you would give to anybody who's trying to learn English?
The biggest one that I tell people all the time, and this is not really, I don't think this is anything new, but it's all to do with confidence. And I think in my experience in Japan, maybe in other countries, it might be a little bit different. I know that in the Philippines, my wife is from the Philippines, so I'm familiar with the Philippines quite a lot, is that the Filipinos are generally quite confident, but in Japan, they are not so confident at speaking, and they're afraid of making mistakes, and they need to be perfect in how they formulate their sentences and grammar structures and things like that. So what's happened is that when I've been teaching is that a lot of people are so focused on being perfect that they don't allow themselves to communicate properly. They second guess themselves. They try to go back and correct it. And I always tell them, don't worry, right? I will correct you when you finish. Like, just try and speak, try and talk, and I'm going to help you, but don't stop. Like, that's the main thing. Don't worry about making mistakes. If you make a mistake, it's no problem at all. I always tell people that mistakes are great because that's the reason why I'm here, is I can help you correct those mistakes. And also, if you make the mistake a few times, eventually you will, I would say, inherently not make it again because you've been told a few times, okay, don't pronounce it like this, or change the word order to this. And eventually you will get the right sentence or the right word. So I think that's mostly related to confidence. And I think a lot of people are not confident in just being able to speak freely. I think that's probably one of the things. Yeah.
Oh, great. I agree with you 100%. Here in Brazil, it's the same thing. It's confidence. It's being, I always tell people, I have students. I think it's a good balance between being humble and also being confident. I have some students who think that they say everything perfectly, and I don't understand anything that they say. And and then there's other people that think that they don't say anything right, but they speak really well, but they just need to. And I always tell them, I'm like, I wish I could take a little bit of the confidence that this guy has and give it to you, so that you can really, kind of trust yourself, trust that that you'll get it, because you are going to make mistakes, like you said. It's gonna happen. But that's why you have a teacher. That's why you're in class, because we're gonna correct you. I think here, one of the cultural things I think it can cause some issues is that in Brazil, a lot of times people, they like to kind of they like to have fun and make jokes, and so I think a lot of times they're afraid that their peers are going to make fun of them for saying something wrong. And it's funny because I always tell people, I say, look, I'm not going to make fun of you. And most of the people, in the U.S. at least, and I believe in the U.K. as well, people, they'll be patient with you because we know that you don't speak, English as your first language. And as long as you try, people are going to try to understand you. They're not going to laugh at what you say. I mean, you might say something really funny and maybe they'll laugh at that, but they're not laughing at you. They're just laughing at the thing that you said. And so I agree with you. I think sometimes people are just a little bit too afraid to speak.
I think that's a great point to make as well, is that when you have a class and someone makes a mistake and there is a little of like humor to it, we're not laughing at you or the other class, not laughing at that. They're laughing because of there's a funny element to it. And usually, an interesting part as well is that some person or whoever it is that makes the mistake, probably the majority of the class have also made that mistake as well.
Yeah.
And I think that's another thing, is that the person who is a little bit more confident and is happy or open to making mistakes, generally their peers have also made those mistakes as well. And they're probably laughing because, oh yeah, I made that mistake too, right? It's I had the same issue. So I agree with you. It's not necessarily you're laughing or making fun of that person of individually. Sometimes it's like a realization of, oh yeah, that is a bit of a mistake. That is something that I can correct, right? So yeah, I think confidence is a big issue. And actually, in Brazil, do a lot of people apologize for their English before they've started speaking?
Yeah. A lot of them will say, I'm sorry for my English. It's not very good. You know, they give you a wonderful, beautiful, grammatically correct paragraph on how their English is not good because, like you said before, they have the repetition of always saying sorry, and they like to say that before they talk. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly the same in Japan. There's so many people apologizing for their English. And another piece of advice that I've kind of mentioned to a few people recently is that don't apologize for your English before you meet, before you even talk to people. Like when you meet them, don't say, I'm sorry for my English, or I don't speak English well, because you've just highlighted that to another person. So now the person who you are speaking with will probably pick up on more mistakes than what they originally would have, because you made them more aware of sort of your lack of English or your lack of vocabulary or something. Yeah. So
you kind of told them what to focus on.
Yeah. So they're focusing more on the mistakes rather than what you're actually communicating about. Yeah, it's an interesting experience of seeing people not have the confidence, and when they do start leveling up and getting better and seeing that confidence grow is really, really good. And I think that's one of the as a teacher, one of the best feelings of seeing somebody communicate more effectively, but not only that, but more confidently as well. It's probably one of, if not the best feelings where as a teacher to see.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I agree with you 100%. Very good. But we're pretty close to our time. But I loved our conversation. I wish we could have talked more. I always joke around with some of my other friends that teach and other people. I always talk to a lot of Americans, and I don't ever get to talk to anybody from the UK. And so it was wonderful. It's nice because it opens a lot of barriers. You know, a lot of times when people, and then on top of, being from the UK, you're also in Japan, and there's just so much there that I'm sure we could make like a 5-hour episode about it. But I really enjoyed everything you said, and I really appreciate the advice. And I know my students and the other people that listen, the people who really take that advice to heart, I know it's going to help them improve a lot.
It's been an absolute pleasure. And thank you very much for inviting me on. And if you wanna do it again sometime, then I'm would be thrilled to come on again. So thank you very much.
Absolutely. We'll have you back soon on it. But thank you everybody who listened as well. Thank you for participating in the episode, and don't forget to follow Jordan on Instagram. What's your tag again?
So my tag is English _lingo, and that's on Instagram.
Yeah, absolutely. Follow him. He has great tips and wonderful things there as well. So thank you, everybody, and stay safe, and we'll see you next time on Bled Talk. Thank you for listening to Bled Talk. Don't forget to subscribe and follow us for more content. We are on all of the popular podcast platforms like Spotify, Apple Podcast, and we're even on YouTube. Don't forget to send in your questions and your suggestions. Thank you once again, and have a great day.